Let's see. We are about to begin what I think is going to be a marvelous conversation. I am speaking with Mark Lieb, clarinet. Look, Mark's already agreeing. Yeah, it's going to be a marvelous conversation.
I hope so.
With clarinetist Mark Lieb, based in Manhattan in New York City. He is artistic director of the Phoenix Ensemble, and I have had the revelation of listening to your most recent CD put out in 2017 by Navona Records, part of the Parma group. It's a wonderful organization. This is a program of chamber music, and those of you who watch this are going to think I'm just really a repeating record, but this has been my discovery over and over and over again as I review so many incredible CDs. This is a recording of music for clarinet and various ensembles that you, everybody out there that plays a wind instrument or is in a string quartet looking for repertoire with clarinet, need to chase down. Let's let's just make sure, probably in New York City, you're very well known, but Phoenix Ensemble. Go up on Amazon and have a look. This is their latest CD, and we're talking about music by Henri Marteau.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
I realize I have a long way to go here.
Who is he, right? Yeah.
But I was just a blank, and what was the discovery? Yeah. Henri Marteau, a genius, right. Especially at wind music. It's amazing. We're going to talk about, and teamed with Alexander Zemlinsky, a piece of Alexander Zemlinsky's. I had heard the name. I think I've probably heard a little music. I was feeling comfortable that I sort of knew the Zemlinsky guy, but the right. Henri Marteau threw me off. So let's just begin. How do you go? Because your other CDs are all this incredible pairings of composers. What's the process? That's what I want to know, Mr. Artistic Director.
I think there should be a purpose to every recording. I mean, I don't like to think of doing like vanity recordings where you just do like another. I mean, you just want to get someone's attention and maybe make people think a little bit. And with this, I had stumbled onto Marteau's clarinet quintet many years ago, and clarinetists we're kind of lucky because we have Mozart and Brahms and Schubert as far as chamber music. But in another way, there's just as far as quantity, there's not a lot out there. So here's this kind of interesting piece I had never heard before, and had my group play it a couple times, and I just fell for it. I think it's a wonderful. The clarinet quintet I'm talking about is a wonderful piece, and it's. I think Marteau's music is very charming, very artfully charming and light, and there's something to me very unique about it, very innovative about it, and so we played it a couple times, and then I thought I'd scout out for something else, maybe of his, and we found the Serenade, which had never been recorded before, and that's a perfect thing to put on the recording. It's never been recorded, and we sort of put the group together and read it down a couple times, and it's a very sweet piece. I really like it.
So here. Let me just review a little bit. We're talking about the Marteau's quintet. That was your first bit. The instrumentation, and tell us the players that you have for that one, please, for that on the recording. The quintet.
The players?
Yeah,
no, it's written for, of course, the same instrumentation as the Mozart and Brahms clarinet quintet, the clarinet and string quartet.
Yeah.
So I think that from what I read, he actually originally wrote it for Richard Mohlfeld, the clarinetist that Brahms had written his quintet for. Yeah. And Mohlfeld had died just before the premiere, so it's got a lot of Brahms sound in it, a lot of.
Brahms is
after the Brahms, quintet.
And Brahms is going to come up a lot because this whole CD is late romantic. What I meant was, if you can remember, I have the CD here, but I'd love to have you tell us that your colleagues who played with you for the quintet.
Igor and if I remember, Carrie Stutt and it's a great group.
Put you on the spot. All right, that's what I did. I'm sorry. And you're right, Igor. I can't pronounce his last name.
Byron
Hernandez. Thank you. Violin, Ava Gerard, viola, and
Ava. Sure.
Well, we made an attempt anyway, everybody, to give everybody credit. But what I found about the quintet is it's just absolutely gorgeous. What I was also intrigued by, it's like circa 1908. So it's a little,
right,
and yet it's a little darker, and I keep thinking, now what's going on? Okay, Nicholas II has been, I'm trying to figure out what historically might have colored it, but it's just a beautiful quintet. And then the Serenade, 1920, I think, if I remember. 1920. We're talking that the Great War has just ended. This should be a downer, and what it is just the jolliest, wonderful nonette. I think, right?
I think I had read that he's at the time, almost exactly the same time, he had written a one-act comedy, a theater piece, Captain Schwalbe or something. That's some strange name, but I would love to hear, by the way. And I think it sounds like it's probably what inspired the serenade. I'm guessing because it's a very comic, light, charming.
It's very French, if I don't insult
very
them.
French.
So,
very French.
Very pleasant. In fact, it's a piece I had never heard, and it's a piece that should be played regularly.
Oh, I think so.
Hello, everybody. By the way, our interview. This is my plug now. Our interview, links to buy the CD, all that good stuff, videos of the performance, on and on and on. It's going to go up at my website, performingartsreview.net, and that's the whole idea. Those of you on the list, but those of you who are curious, to go to performingartsreview.net and have a look. It'll go up in the next few days. But because this repertoire is just really stunning, people are going to, I would think, run out to buy it. It's just delightful. The serenade is just exquisite, really.
And there's not a lot of wind pieces of that structure. Like it's a nonette, so it's like you think of the Mozart serenades or something, and some of the Strauss pieces, the wind pieces. But there's just not a lot of pieces written for that. Instrumentation.
The instrumentation is, by the way, the bass clarinet is a stroke of genius.
And yes. Oh, sure. To add the bass clarinet.
So, okay. All right. Well, what do you say? Shall we move on to Mr. Zemlinsky? By the way, how did I think I asked you kind of sort of, but this idea of how do you stumble upon these? How did this process begin? Stumbling and discovery, and then research. For all of the wonderful works on your various CDs, but let's just focus on these two guys.
I think, and I'm trying to think of how it all came together, but it's Zemlinsky and Marteau are actually kind of linked in a way, but through Brahms. I mean, Brahms was very influential on both of them, and I don't know, the Zemlinsky is just a gorgeous piece. It's not played very often, I suppose, and I thought it would be a good match for it. I mean, it would just like
urban noises.
Did you hear that?
Kind of like my house.
Welcome to Manhattan.
And
I live in Washington Heights. So.
In my little town, I'm right in downtown Santa Barbara, and sure enough, there's some traffic racket that kicks over. Anyway,
I don't know. I think I told you I did the Music Academy in the West a couple summers, so I know Santa Barbara very well.
Yeah, sweet city. Yeah.
I loved it. Yeah, it was fun.
It's getting to be too expensive, but that's another story. Anyway, so when did all this? I guess what I'm getting at is some people specialize in looking for fresh. Some people stay put. So you're one of those that's looking.
Yeah,
for
I think I don't like to just record something just to record it. I think it should have a purpose. And having Marteau as this composer that no one knows, it was a very exciting. To put the group together and read the serenade for the first time was very exciting because we didn't know if it was good enough. We didn't know if we would want to record it, and it just turned out to be this amazing thing and to me that's what it's all about. So, and the same thing with our other recordings, just pairing kind of odd matches that connect some way. I don't know if like the Feldman and Babbitt quintets that we recorded a long time ago, 10 years ago. I felt they write in opposite directions. Babbitt does the very complex and Feldman does the very simple, minimal.
Interesting.
But yet they were both kind of breaking barriers in the same way, kind of going in opposite directions, but kind of in the same way. And it's funny reading how people's reaction to it. They kind of saw that there really were connections between those two pieces. So I don't know. I just
you know what? I know what it speaks to.
What's that?
What it speaks to is Juilliard. That's what it speaks
to. Is that what it is?
And Northwestern, and in other words, the highest level of training, thus the highest level of intellectual curiosity. This is really what's going on here, Mr. Artistic Director. I love it. I salute you. What a service, And you mentioned that CD from 10 years ago, and I keep thinking to myself, this is craziness. I can't wait. I'm so curious about that CD, but myself. But the point is, the years don't matter. I mean, my example is I use the Henry Melville example. I mean, he wrote whatever Moby Dick in 1848. In 1878, he didn't say, "Oh no, it's just it's been 20 years now. It's just no good. It's not worth it." Yeah. So.
Well, the Babbitt Quintet is just the most difficult thing I think I've ever. Mm. We had like 20 rehearsals, I think, and
wow.
And it's I think the score was like 98 pages long, and we literally had to like verbally discuss every measure, and it was quite a
wow.
It was quite a project, and that had never been recorded before, so that was like, again, very exciting to sort of bring that to the public for the first time.
And now we know why. It had never been recorded.
It's crazy.
Before.
I mean. I love Babbitt. And I realize he's not for everybody, but there's something wonderful about Babbitt. I think that everybody should try to get to know anyway. I completely understand if people don't like Babbitt. I get that, but
I can call myself a vagary about Babbitt. It's been a while since I remember listening to anything, and I don't remember being dropped down dead in love. And so
right. Well, he was a very brainy guy, very intellectual in his music. Actually, he loved jazz, and there's a lot of jazz, believe it or not, in it. There's a piece out that you should check out for somebody who doesn't know Babbitt. It's a little more accessible than most, called All Set. I think it's called All Set. And it's basically a jazz combo written in the style of Babbitt's music, so it's got jazz things in it for this. It's cool. It's cool. You should if somebody doesn't know his music, and that might be a good place to start. And actually, there's some jazz in the quintet too, but it's a little more serious and brainy than this other piece, this All Set pies. But
okay, enough of Babbitt. We got to get back in focus here.
Sorry, Marto
and Zemlinsky. So in other words, the decision to pair the two, I'm not sure I got any. I feel like I'm kind of going in circles, but it might be just me. Something about pairing the two. Why those two? Did we cover that or not?
I think it ended up being the late romantic pairing, and the fact that Brahms was so involved with the both of them. It was such an influence on both of them.
Let's talk about that for a bit, because it was so obvious. And then I read, you mentioned that in the liner notes, this Brahms connection.
Right.
And I have developed over the years in my old age, a newfound understanding of how intensely powerful some of these composers were on dozens of other composers in their era.
Right.
And your CD helped me to understand Brahms did in fact have a tremendous effect on that late Romanticism, just before things moved a little more into the 20th century.
There's a great book out by Jan Swafford, I think is his name, on Brahms. It's a biography. Which what I like about it is a lot of times you read books on composers and it's very analytical and about analyzing score, but this is about his life, his personal life, and it's very interesting. And it talks about. I mean, he just was extremely ultra famous, all through his whole career, and had such an incredible influence on so many people and so many other composers. And he was famous the way that pop stars are famous now, I think.
And yet he had the same, and yet he too had his own secret, horrible, hard ride. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. His personal life was a mess. His personal life was a mess, total mess. And
the whole thing with the Schumanns is quite astonishing. The
right.
conductor here had me a couple of years ago. I'm forever grateful. I did a little research for him, reading those letters of between Schumann's, Brahms, and also the idea of these other composers, Schubert, Beethoven, how respected they were by their own colleagues. I just had no idea that was going on, let alone the impacts of the Napoleonic Wars, and on and on and on it goes. That's why I was kind of curious about this jolly piece from Henri in 1920, in the shambles of World War I.
It's strange. It's such a charming piece, but I think it must be really difficult to write a really charming, light piece, but make it artful. It's a really... Actually, it has depth in it. And strangely enough to say, if you listen to this, you'd understand what I'm saying. It has a lot of depth to it, and it's also very light and fun and innovative. And I just, it makes me want to hear other music of his. I think there's a lot. There's actually several other recordings just recently coming out of his string quartets, and I noticed his violin concerto is coming out in a couple months.
Did you start that? Can you take
I
any
don't-
credit?
No, not
Didn't-
personally.
didn't
Maybe
you-
we had a little bit of a oomph, with our recording. Who knows? I don't know the details of it, but he was a violinist. He was a soloist, a very well-known soloist.
Very well established. His family was so that always intrigues me also. So he really was a privileged person.
Yes.
Had everything his way, if you will, and was a violinist. That's why when I listened to the wind material, I just couldn't believe it.
I agree. I know he's
amazing.
obviously a very talented guy, and he had he had the solo career of a worldwide solo career, and people knew that probably more than his music. I don't know why him as a composer didn't, why it's been, nobody knows who he is. I don't know why, but I think it looks like there's some things coming out in the next year or two. I was just noticing that he wrote 4-string quartets. He wrote a cantata on Joan of Arc, which I think
I read about that. Fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I would love to hear it.
I mean, the worry is, at least in my mind, is okay. He had a couple good bits here. Now, if I go and start discovering Jeanne d'Arc and the others, when am I going to find the junk?
You're going to be disappointed.
But what I really think it is that there are, and this is why I love what you people are doing and these various labels are doing, and college music professors who are putting out CDs. You are bringing this music to life. It didn't happen in my youth. You know what I mean? And others are in a highly technological, glorious age now. And so I think actually we're in better shape as classical musicians.
Yeah. I remember. I mean, I'm getting up. I graduated my master's degree at Juilliard in 1991. So I'm
so you were 12.
There.
I see.
I'm an old man. And around that time was just around that time in the mid 90s or so. It was affordable to get the recording equipment to create an individual studio. I remember a good cellist friend of mine. He came from a rich family, so but he had all the high-end recording equipment, and he made a demo recording. That's kind of how I got hooked on making recordings. But that just started in the mid 90s. Now it's the recording equipment the cutting edge equipment is very affordable. So you have a lot of great people. Jeremy Tressler is my recording engineer. He does all of our recordings, based in Riverdale, and Bronxville. He has a church, a permanent studio in the church, and he does all of our recordings. And he's fantastic. And he's one of those. He's just a geek when it comes to engineering stuff. He's got an artful ear, for that. He's just fantastic.
Well, that explains and gives me an opportunity to give the CD yet another plug. I mentioned it to you. I may have mentioned it earlier, but I am now really. I've always, I can hear things. I can hear a lot of stuff, but when I hear an ambient, I guess would be the word I would want to sound, that absolutely, totally, perfectly works. That's like incredible. And of course, as we all know, the level of engineering of acoustic engineering and so on is really advanced. It's hardly ever that I have heard so far anything particularly disappointing. But sometimes, and especially with wind literature, that's a little bit tricky. That nonette, it's a little tricky with that kind of wind sound. Anyway, the recording's gorgeous.
Well, thank you. Now, I mean, we're both, Jeremy and I, are very geeky. We're both very involved in the process. I love what they call score mapping, when you take the session and piece it together. I like that. A lot of people hate that. I like that. And we do go back and forth and talk about compressions and stuff, geeky stuff like that.
And yet, let me remind
what you're talking about, the how much reverb and we just go back. We work on that a lot. So
and let me just lest everybody forget who you are. You are also one of the most magnificent. I studied clarinet for a while. I don't know. It just wasn't for me. Conducting was easier. What can I say? Anyway, bottom line is you are a master clarinetist. You're making a living in New York City. The sound that I hear, the clarinet, the timbre, the tonality of the instrument, all that good stuff about clarinet, and the playing and style and finesse and all the rest of it's superb. So just
well, thank you.
You got your earphones on. I don't want anybody to misunderstand that you're just in the studio geeking out all the time. You're actually
I don't mind being a geek. I'm a geek.
A living, breathing clarinetist.
That's okay. But Jeremy, we've known each other for 12, 13 years now. We're doing stuff. So this last recording that we just did, I think we're getting better at it because we just can read each other's minds and know. He's good at if I say I want this, and this, and he's very good at giving me this, and this. I mean, he seems to be able to.
Yeah.
So,
well,
and I like the whole
that's
process.
that's collegiality for you.
Yeah. Well,
At
I just
that
like
level.
the process.
And the ensemble, as we I think started or not, I've gotten a little lost in the conversation, but you've been doing this for 25 plus years as Phoenix Ensemble. And what happened where you said to yourself, I can do it better? Let me see. Let me see. What's the name? Oh, okay, Phoenix Rising. Something about that. Go. Tell me.
The Phoenix Bird. Sure. I think a lot of what we do is, well, I think the classical music business is kind of a mess right now. Just my opinion. I think there's
Really?
no audience, and there's no audience, and I mean it's gotten worse and worse. Like I say, I'm old, so back in the '90s, when it's bad back then, but I think it's even worse now. It's just my opinion, and things need to be done to maybe find a new audience and try to relax a little bit and get more people involved in classical music, and that's kind of the theme of the group. And we do a lot of we have like 4 or 5 residencies in Manhattan. We're at the 92nd Street Y, which is a
nice.
It's a nice
Very
place,
famous.
and then it's very nice facilities.
It's a community. It's very well known as a community theater as well.
It's the most glamorous community. It's like all kinds of people from all ages and walk in there all the time. So we have a built-in audience, and then they give us there's lots of great facilities and performance spaces, and we do a lot of classes and workshops. And I actually have more of an interest in targeting adults. Like a lot of people when they build audiences, they think of going to young people, but I think adults. There's plenty of work to do with trying to get adults interested. Well, millennials, yeah, definitely. If you can do that, I mean, even like 30. We're trying to target a class right now at the Y for like 30, 40 somethings, which is kind of it's a challenge.
Just to remind you who have told me how old you are, those people.
Very old.
I'm 30 years older than the folks you just mentioned. So give me a break. I'm seeing the far horizon. You know what I mean? I can see the great sunset in the future.
Tell me about it.
But to try, and I must, because do we have time? We have time. I have to give you a bit of positive editorial rejoinder, which is that I've watched it even go bad also.
Sure.
I think I have a theory. It's none of our business. We're talking about other stuff, but about how come.
I'd be interested to hear it. But okay.
Some other time over drinks, I'll fly out. We'll talk.
All right.
But I do see things coming back. Europe's way ahead of us, and what I mean by that is making these events informal. You can have dinner at home and then just throw yourself on the cable car, go to the concert. You don't have to dress up. You don't have to do the tie and stuff. And the musicians the same. Now I love white tie and tailcoat. I love it. I think men look really great in it. And I'm now getting older. It is so antiquated. It is so 19th century. It is so absolutely unnecessary that I'm ready to get rid of it. Saturday night I reviewed the Santa Barbara Symphony here in Santa Barbara, an all Stravinsky program, delicious program that I'll do a review about. And I hadn't been for a few concerts because I'm up to my eyebrows in CD reviews. But the point is that orchestra, for the first time in my experience, no white tie tailcoat. They were all, as we do in this modern time, kind of open shirt, black, and so on. And that's nice. It felt somehow better. I used to be snobbish about it. So things are getting better. And I saw more young people in the audience. It was a mix because there was also a dance segment and so on. But you guys are doing the same thing in terms of helping younger people to understand this is interesting. People, I'm sure, want to think of themselves as being intelligent. They don't want to think of themselves as doing nothing but looking at comic books. So this should be a positive challenge to.
I think that relaxing is, for certain people, I think is very important. I think that they feel like that formality makes the arts alien to them. And it takes very little. I think, to kind of calm that down a little bit, and then they see, oh, okay, maybe I can, identify with this a little bit more.
Look, their shirts are untucked. Wow. You know what I mean?
That's all it takes.
That thing about the shorter untucked shirts and all that stuff.
Right.
Let me see what I've we talked about the Nonette 1922. What a beautiful discovery that is. Honestly, we've talked it probably to death.
That's great.
The influence of Brahms and so on. This quintet for clarinet and string quartet. I know we touched on it, but how does all of this repertoire? I probably asked you this again also for some reason. I'm a little blank, but how does this clarinet writing fall? How does all of it, in terms of clarinet writing, fall for your instrument? You know how some composers just naturally know what they're doing.
Well, it's very well written. You mean in particular Marteau's quintet, you're asking?
Well, or for that matter, all of the repertoire on this CD.
Well, I have a feeling that because of when it was written and who it was written for, I have a feeling that Marteau really had the Brahms quintet in his head very much, and in particular Mohlfeld, the clarinetist Brahms wrote his quintet for Richard Mohlfeld, and then Marteau, right, and they played together. Mohlfeld and Marteau played together, of course, being musicians that had solo careers, and so I'm sure that Mohlfeld supposedly had this beautiful, rich, kind of Brahmsy kind of sound that was like everybody writes about it. I wish I could have heard it. It'd be an amazing thing to hear, but. And I think that's probably what he had in mind with his quintet, sort of modeling it half off of Mohlfeld and Brahms. I think that's kind of where that comes from, and it's all in A clarinet, which. Anybody, clarinets, you have a B flat clarinet and A clarinet. A clarinet has a little bit darker covered quality to it, kind of a rich, late romantic kind of quality to it. I'm sure he was, it's all in A. All of it is in A, which is, the Brahms is also all in A clarinet also. So I'm sure that he was thinking about that also. I don't know, does that help too?
And then also wrote well for the instrument, apparently.
Yeah, he seemed to. I mean, like you said, it's very interesting. He's a violinist, and yet he seemed to have. I don't know who he studied with. I tried to figure it out.
I haven't seen it anywhere.
He's a really talented composer, and for someone who's completely unknown, I think he's really very talented. If there's so many other composers that you could name dozens of them that are very good. But. We know all about them and all that, and he's like just as good at them, if not better. In here, we don't know anything about him, so it's kind of strange. I don't know why, if why this happened, why his music got lost. But like I said, there's some recordings coming out.
This is the thing, and yet, good thing upside is he had a good life. He had a good career.
Oh, yeah.
Career.
Oh, sure.
Zemlinsky apparently went into died in obscurity and wasn't discovered again until the 1970s. So there's the kind of a sad business. Zemlinsky, clearly a major composer.
Yeah, I think we were saying as we were working on it, like if Mahler had written chamber music, it would sound like Zemlinsky. There's that slow movement in the Zemlinsky is just so beautiful, and it sounds like if Mahler wrote chamber music, it would be. Yeah. It sounds like.
And there's also the Jewish connection, and very interesting. And they fled the Nazis, I think, the Zemlinsky family. If I recall. Did I get that?
Yes, I think so.
I think they fled the Nazis. So a rough life. Okay, well, with all of this, I think we'd better start winding it down. But there's the usual standard. No, not that fast. There's the usual standard question about what's up next, what's going on. Give us a clue. What's going down? What's the next CD? Come on.
We just last week we had a new release, another kind of odd pairing of the. I had Brahms in my head from the project we were just talking about, and so we paired the Brahms clarinet quintet with the Elliott Carter clarinet quintet. Wow. And there's just which is the Carter is fairly unknown. I think there's only one other recording of it, and I don't know how to say. I mean, I don't know if they're linked in a way that they're linked in I think in an odd way because they're so different. But what I thought was interesting is that Brahms. Died in 1897, I think, and Carter was born only like 10 years later, which I think is a strange thing to think about because Carter's so different. No, really, I mean they're very close. I mean it was almost like handed out, and I didn't really think like that, and it's like that period of time between Brahms dying and Carter being born and being the first modernist composer. There's a lot of stuff that happened.
And maybe if I can throw this word in, not being an expert or a musicologist at all, but kind of reborn. And the reason I was chuckling a little earlier is Elliott Carter was a classicist. Some of his early works, there's a beautiful adagio for beautiful classicism, and then he broke with it.
Right. I think he was going towards the Copland-y kind of. He was like very straightforward, and then he just felt like he needed to go somewhere else. Yeah. I mean, I could talk to you for.
He said enough of this Brahms. I mean, I think the whole lesson we're taking out of this is just how powerful an influence Brahms had on the 19th century.
I think, sure. And it was a different time. People thought differently and lived differently, and Carter comes from a different time.
So there's another CD coming out. Does it have a title yet? What's going on? aside from
Oh,
Phoenix
I think it's
Ensemble?
just we have very uninspiring. It's Brahms Carter clarinet quintets. That's what it's
That's
called.
why. So this series will continue for another 20, 30 years. You're set. Perfect. I'm going to wind it down. We've been talking.
Okay.
I've been talking with clarinetist Mark Lieb in New York City. He's artistic director of the Phoenix Ensemble. They put out a great service to all of us, to say nothing of wind players and clarinetists. Their CD 2017 release is the CD we were talking about. So on Navona Records. Sorry, Navona Records. Program of music chamber works by Henri Marteau and Alexander Zemlinsky. Beautiful serenade for winds that is to die for. It's so fabulous.
Thank you.
And his quintet for string, quartet, and clarinet is something that should be played in the repertoire. It's gorgeous, gorgeous material. And then Zemlinsky's trio for clarinet, cello, and piano with colleagues of Mark's in Phoenix Ensemble. Been going strong for 25 plus years. Please continue to do so. I think we're done.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Many, many thanks, Mark. Great pleasure talking with you.
Thank you very much.
Right.